a great Memorial Day weekend in the rain here in Charlotte. The weather was very uncharacteristic for sure. To have, high 50s and low 60s and rain on what's usually about an 85-degree weekend. But we had our fair share of racing going on. First, we had F1 at Monaco. What'd you think of that?
Boring.
Oh, man.
Boring.
It's such a...
The start is exciting, but anything after that is just
Well, that's why
boring.
Everyone made such a big deal about the qualifying is because you knew that that's the race, right? Like whoever gets the pole, just they win there. So unless some bad strategy happens or something, it's one of those. I get it. It's a historical event. We talked about it, probably earlier this year about when we were talking about Murray kill.
Yeah.
And it was like it was Monaco were definitely killing for sure. But it's just not an exciting race just because the layout of the track is a one-lane track. So.
But the atmosphere is still
really
exciting.
It is. You can't definitely downplay the atmosphere there. It's been good. But I feel like it's really good everywhere at F1. So I just don't know that, it just seemed like, before the big rise of F1, Monaco was always the one staple of huge event. It was their huge event. But, you definitely, once you tune in and you see them single file out, it's not much to see after that.
So I've not followed F1 for a very long time, but I'm guessing the race has always played out like that for years and years and years.
It has, just because of it's such a track, F1's largely track position type racing anyway. But yeah, it's just the layout of the track. I mean, they can barely run too wide. It's very hard to overtake for sure. But one of the more interesting things that I've heard coming out of that is I started following a few new accounts on F1 of these engineers that were breaking down the underbodies of the F1 cars. So, it was a big deal when like the cars crashed. I guess there was a crane that kept lifting the cars way up in the air.
I saw that.
And everyone was taking pictures. And I'm telling you, that is so valuable. I guarantee you, I mean, no telling the tens of millions of dollars that they spend on developing the underbodies. And you looked at Red Bulls and you were like, oh my gosh, they're racing a different car than everybody else. Like it just had so many different rounded edges and I forget the account that I followed, but he broke it down. It was just like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe I've been staring at this picture of the underside of the Red Bull car for 4 hours now, but here's what I see. Mm-hmm. And so certainly, it's not a benefit probably for Red Bull to see other cars because I know Mercedes had their cars lifted in the air, and I think one of the other manufacturers did as well. But Red Bull had the most to lose.
Yeah. If you're Red Bull, who gives a shit? The other people are doing
They don't care, but when they got car lifted in the air, yikes. That was a bad day for them. So surely you're going to see some new underbodies coming from the competition that hopefully will close the gap. But, I saw a bunch of articles too about, what is F1 to do about this problem? And it's like, well, I like the ingenuity of it. Red Bull, and even Toto Wolff said, well, Red Bull earned that position to be dominant. They worked really hard and they've found an advantage and they're kicking our butts. Same thing that we did for many years at Mercedes, and eventually it's up to us to catch them. So I don't know about, changing rules and stuff to bring people back. I'm never a big fan of that. And F1 usually doesn't have a whole lot of griping between teams saying it's what someone else is doing is unfair. But the fact is that we got a team that's stinking up all the races, and certainly it's losing a little bit of its storylines because of it.
Hey, yeah, I have a stat for you guys also.
Whoa, he has a mic.
He's got a mic.
We got a mic over here.
I'm be honest, when you started talking, I thought I was talking. Like I couldn't figure it out for a second.
Everyone, welcome Travis.
They can't see me, they can only hear me.
Okay.
But there hasn't been an on-track pass for the lead at Monaco since 1996. So after like the start.
I bet you what
Shoot,
I bet Mike Ford from NASCAR. I bet you Mike Ford from NASCAR could come up with some passes. Still love you, Mike. You're my boy. Wow, 1996? Is that for
Pass
real?
for the lead?
Yeah, there was a person tweeting that he was like, "There's probably some things with at the restarts and stuff like that, but like while racing is going on, that was flying around."
I mean,
pass
I
for-
would have said like in
You
the
said
last.
a pass for the lead.
Yes,
Yeah. Someone overtaking
overtaking
How's that
first
possible?
place.
How's it possible? Because you can't hardly fit 2 cars on the racetrack.
I understand, but since for 20 years now, no one has passed for the lead.
Well,
at
have you seen how
Monaco?
big those cars are and how small the streets are?
That's
Yeah.
true too. They have
They
grown
keep
in
getting
size.
wider.
They've gotten wider, longer. They are growing in
Yeah.
size. So
I personally don't think that. I know you're saying that yes, they're lacking storylines, but I think the popularity of F1 was brought on because we make it. They were able to make people think it's cool and that they think they should care about it. So I really don't think the racing matters.
listen,
that much.
I mean, I have to give an absolute shout out to the announcers, and I
They do a
heard
good job. They make you.
unbelievable they make you think, oh my God, this is unbelievable what Max Verstappen did in the final sector in qualifying. I mean, screaming in the mic saying, cannot believe what just happened. And I'm like, wow, I guess this is a big moment.
I should care about
I
this.
should care about it.
yeah.
And it's just crazy when you hear kind of the monotone that we have, right? It's just da 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 da. And so, man, it's like Lee Diffie does an amazing job. Wow, he calls IndyCar races. It's just fantastic. And speaking of IndyCars, let's move on from F1 since there was not much to talk about. The Indy 500, wow, great turnout there, 300-some thousand people. What a day for Roger Penske. I mean, all around. Forget the Coke 600. It hadn't happened yet. But the guy owns the track. It's sold out. He did, obviously, a phenomenal job. When he bought that track, he just continued to make it better and better. Roger is someone that takes pride in, looking good, feeling good type of mantra. And so, when he bought that racetrack, you knew that he was going to kind of take it to the next level and the fan experience. And it's just it's cool for him to be able to experience that. When you saw him on top of the roof, cheering him on in the last few laps, like he even admitted, like, I'm not the track owner anymore. I'm rooting for my team cars. So great finish. Yeah, somewhat controversial finish, I would say, because typically, I mean, it was very NASCAR of them to like force the end of the race to go green.
Yeah.
It was very iffy whether they were going to get the race started back before. They brought it down to the red flag, and I guess they started.
They had 3 red flags.
It was a green and white together when they started, right? So there was one green flag lap. And, you heard Ericsson saying that, this is kind of unsafe. The tires are cold. We were just stopped. I see both points of view because you want to, I mean, you even said it in the bus. You're like, well, surely as a fan, you want to see this thing go green. I'm like, yes, but also like, you can't bend the rules or change the rules in the middle of the game either. If you hadn't done it before, you shouldn't change it then. But as a fan watching, yes, I wanted to see it in under green.
Yeah, I was very disappointed when the thought that was going to end under caution came into my head because I'm not someone who's always been invested in the Indy 500. I think this year I was probably more invested than any other year for a variety of reasons. So I was watching the race more or less from the start to the finish, and we get to the end, and I want to see some action on the last lap. I want to see guys trying to win the race. So if it was to end under caution, I would have been really disappointed.
Yeah, and it was interesting because the Penske cars didn't have a ton of speed in qualifying, but they chipped away, and the race is so different because it is such a big handling type of race. Like I said, I've been a huge advocate of put these next gen cars back on the oval there at Brickyard. It's so much more prestigious. The Indy Road Course is not a marquee event. You put us back on the oval, it is a marquee event. And this car, the next gen car, has so much drag down the straightaway, so it's so slow by itself that like I said, the slingshot passes would be huge. As long as you slow our cars up just a little bit in the corners to make it where the wake isn't terrible. you would have fantastic racing. So I'm looking forward to going back there. I'm hearing next year on the oval.
How about the tire? We can't talk about the Indy 500 without the tire.
The tire, wow. Old Snowball, which was the white Chevy Cobalt that took it to the chin.
Yeah.
Thank goodness it was a car taking it and not the stands, because obviously I got informed, it was Indy had some fatalities when they came to Charlotte, had a tire, same thing, go over the fence and take some people out, which is obviously very tragic. So we were very lucky in that scenario that it went into the part that had an opening. Right after the stands there in turn 2, there's a little gap, and then I think there's some suites, like some VIP suites or whatever. Just very fortunate, certainly.
Yeah. I have a question. You might not be able to answer this because you're not an IndyCar driver, but maybe if Connor Daly's listening, he and the Speed Street guys can answer this. Who was the driver that was clipped and then flipped over? Kirkwood?
Yeah.
Was it Kyle Kirkwood?
Mm-hmm.
When he was sliding upside down, he
opened his visor. I have no idea.
That seems like the one thing you don't want to do.
You would
all
think
these
so.
Sparks are flying into your face, and you open the visor. I don't know.
I was dumbfounded as well, but I mean, in the moment, goodness, who knows?
And it was very calm. Like he was just very under control. Oh, I'm sliding.
Yeah, it was interesting to see that, and it did. It definitely. I saw a couple of people saying, "Man, that looks like it was right out of the movies, like an action scene." So, luckily, no injuries,